If you think this story will end with revenge, you're completely wrong. What I discovered about my mother changed everything I thought I knew about love, sacrifice, and what it truly means to be a mistake. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because this story will stay with you long after it ends. My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. I live in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon, where the rain seems to wash away everything except the memories I wish I could forget. For as long as I can remember, my mother, Linda, made it crystal clear that I was an accident, a mistake that derailed her dreams and ruined her life. Growing up in our cramped 2-bedroom house on Maple Street in Salem, Oregon, I learned to make myself invisible. The walls were thin, painted a faded yellow that had turned almost gray over the years, with water stains in the corners that looked like tear marks. I could hear everything through those walls. Mom's frustrated sighs when she paid bills at the kitchen table covered in past due notices, her phone conversations with friends where she'd complain about being stuck with a kid, and worst of all, the deafening silence that followed whenever I tried to share something exciting from school. The house itself seemed to absorb our dysfunction. The hardwood floors creaked with every step, as if they were groaning under the weight of our broken relationship. My bedroom was barely big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser, but it became my sanctuary. I'd spend hours there doing homework by the light of a desk lamp I'd bought with money from babysitting the neighbors' kids, dreaming of a future where someone might actually be proud of me. Winter mornings were the worst. The old furnace barely worked, and I'd wake up to frost on the inside of my bedroom window. Mom would be in the kitchen, already dressed for her job at the insurance office, drinking instant coffee and staring at bills spread across the table like a losing poker hand. The silence between us was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. "Sarah, you need to understand something," she told me on my 16th birthday, not even looking up from her cup of black coffee. There was no cake, no candles, no celebration, just another Tuesday morning in our kitchen that smelled perpetually of burnt toast and broken dreams. I had plans, real plans. I was accepted to Portland State University. I was going to study journalism, maybe work for a real newspaper someday. I was going to be somebody before you came along. Her words hit me like ice water, each syllable a small knife twist, even though I'd heard variations of this speech countless times before. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves. It was the way she said them, matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather or reading from a grocery list, as if my existence was just another mundane disappointment to acknowledge and move past. I spent my teenage years working part-time jobs to escape both the house and the constant reminder of what a burden I was. First at Murphy's Corner Store, where Mr. Murphy, a kind elderly man with thick glasses, would let me study behind the counter during slow hours. He'd sometimes slip me an extra $5 and tell me I was going places. Words that felt foreign but precious, coming from someone who wasn't legally obligated to care about me. Then I worked at Betty's Diner on Highway 22, where truckers would stop for coffee and pie on their way to Portland. The diner had red vinyl booths with duct tape covering the tiers, and a jukebox that only played country songs from the 1980s. The truckers, road-weary and often lonely, would leave better tips than my mother ever left encouragement. One regular, a woman named Big Sue, who drove 18-wheelers across the Pacific Northwest, would always ask about my grades and college plans. "You're too smart for this place, honey," she'd tell me, sliding an extra $10 bill across the Formica counter. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Every dollar I earned went toward my escape fund, hidden in an old Nike shoebox under my bed, beneath a stack of blankets my grandmother had made before she died. The Pacific Northwest rain would tap against my bedroom window like Morse code, spelling out my desperate need to leave this place where I'd never be anything more than a mistake. College was my lifeline, my golden ticket out of Salem and away from the constant reminder that I was unwanted. I earned a partial scholarship to Oregon State University in Corvallis, studying business administration while working nights at a call center in a windowless office building downtown. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as I took order after order for products people probably didn't need, but each paycheck brought me closer to independence. My dorm room became the first space that was truly mine. I decorated it with inspirational quotes I'd cut from magazines and photos of places I wanted to visit someday. My roommate, Jessica, came from a loving family in California, who sent care packages filled with homemade cookies and encouraging notes. I'd watch her face light up during their weekly video calls, experiencing secondhand the warmth of unconditional parental love. "Your mom seems so distant," Jessica observed once after overhearing one of my brief, awkward phone calls home. Is everything okay? She's just not very emotional. I'd deflect, too ashamed to admit that my own mother saw me as the worst thing that ever happened to her. I'd call Mom every Sunday, dutifully, even though our conversations never lasted more than 5 minutes and followed the same soul-crushing script every time. How's school? She'd ask, but I could hear the TV in the background, usually some daytime talk show or soap opera, her attention already elsewhere. Good, Mom. I made Dean's List again. I'm thinking about applying for an internship at Nike's corporate office in Beaverton. That's nice, honey. Listen, I've gotta go. My show's starting, and I don't want to miss what happens to Miranda. Click. The dial tone would echo in my ear like a judgment, reminding me that even fictional characters on a soap opera were more important to her than her own daughter's achievements. After graduation, I moved to Portland and started working for Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. The city's coffee culture and artistic vibe suited me perfectly. Here, being different was celebrated rather than merely tolerated. I rented a studio apartment in the Pearl District. Nothing fancy, but it had exposed brick walls and large windows overlooking the Willamette River that made me feel like I was finally living my own life, not just surviving someone else's disappointment. Portland embraced me in ways my hometown never had. I'd spend Saturday mornings at the farmers market at PSU, wandering between stalls selling organic vegetables and handmade jewelry, surrounded by people who chose to be there, who found joy in simple pleasures. I joined a book club that met monthly at Powell's Books, surrounded by fellow readers who became the chosen family I'd never had growing up. My apartment became a reflection of the person I was becoming. Plants thrived on the windowsills, art from local artists covered the walls, and I finally owned furniture that wasn't secondhand or inherited. For the first time in my life, I was building something that was entirely mine. At work, I threw myself into campaigns with the passion of someone who had something to prove. I worked late nights and weekends, not because I had to, but because professional success felt like vindication, proof that I wasn't the mistake my mother had always claimed I was. My colleagues began to rely on me for creative solutions and fresh perspectives. Sarah, you have this unique way of seeing things, my boss, Mr. Morrison, told me during my first performance review. It's like you understand what it means to fight for something better. If only he knew how literally true that was. Years passed with minimal contact. Mom and I exchanged Christmas cards with generic messages printed inside, and birthday texts that never went beyond, "Happy birthday. Hope you have a good day." We maintained the bare minimum to preserve the illusion of a relationship, like two strangers going through the motions of caring. I threw myself into building the life I'd always dreamed of, climbing the corporate ladder, dating occasionally though nothing ever seemed to stick, traveling to conferences in cities I'd only read about as a child. I bought my first car, a used Honda Civic that represented freedom in a way most people couldn't understand. I decorated my apartment with photos from trips to California wine country and weekend getaways to the Oregon coast, building a portfolio of experiences that proved I was living, not just surviving. But deep down, in quiet moments when I'd see mothers and daughters laughing together at coffee shops or sharing inside jokes at the grocery store, her words echoed in every achievement. Every success felt hollow, because the person who should have been proudest of me saw me as her biggest regret. I'd catch myself seeking approval from bosses, friends, even strangers, desperately trying to fill a void that had been carved out when I was too young to understand that it wasn't my fault. I went to therapy for a while, sitting in Dr. Catherine's comfortable office with its soft lighting and strategically placed tissue boxes, trying to unpack decades of feeling unwanted. She helped me understand that my mother's words said more about her own pain than about my worth, but understanding something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two very different things. Dating was particularly challenging. How do you explain to someone that you've never felt unconditionally loved? That the voice in your head constantly questions whether you deserve happiness? I went through a series of relationships that never quite worked. Men who sensed my desperate need for validation and either took advantage of it or were scared away by its intensity. Last month, everything changed when I received a call from Dr. Martinez at Portland General Hospital. Mom had collapsed at work and was in the emergency room. Despite everything, despite years of emotional distance and hurtful words, I dropped everything and drove the 3 hours back to my hometown. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear, a combination that hit me the moment I walked through the automatic doors. I found Mom in room 314, looking smaller than I remembered, connected to machines that beeped steadily in a rhythm that somehow matched my anxious heartbeat. Her graying hair was spread across the white pillow like spilled silver, and for the first time in years, she looked vulnerable, not the tough, critical woman who had shaped my childhood, but a fragile human being who suddenly seemed very mortal. The sight of her like that, pale, diminished, surrounded by the sterile efficiency of modern medicine, stirred something in me I hadn't expected. Beneath decades of hurt and resentment, there was still a daughter who didn't want to lose her mother. Complicated as our relationship was. "Sarah?" she whispered when she saw me, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed earlier. "You came." "Of course I came, Mom." I pulled a chair beside her bed, noting how the afternoon light streaming through the window made her skin look almost translucent, like parchment paper. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," she managed, attempting a weak smile that reminded me of glimpses of warmth I'd occasionally seen as a child, usually when she thought I wasn't looking. Dr. Martinez, a kind woman with gentle eyes and graying temples, explained that Mom had suffered a significant heart attack, likely brought on by years of stress, poor diet, and a lifetime of smoking cigarettes she'd tried unsuccessfully to quit dozens of times. She'd be fine with proper treatment and lifestyle changes, but she needed someone to help during her recovery. Assistance with medication schedules, transportation to follow-up appointments, and monitoring for any concerning symptoms. The irony wasn't lost on me. The mistake she never wanted was now her lifeline. The only person in her life who could or would step up when she needed help most. I took a leave of absence from work and moved back into my childhood home to care for her. The house looked exactly the same, frozen in time like a museum of my painful memories. The same faded yellow walls, the same creaky floorboards that announced every movement, the same kitchen table where she'd delivered so many cutting remarks about my existence. Even the smell was identical, a mixture of old coffee, cigarette smoke that had seeped into the wallpaper over decades, and something indefinably sad. My old bedroom had been converted into a storage room, filled with boxes of Christmas decorations, old tax documents, and items that should have been thrown away years ago. I cleared out a small space and set up an air mattress, surrounded by the detritus of a life that had somehow stood still, while mine had moved forward. During those first few days of her recovery, we barely spoke beyond the necessities. I'd bring her medications, a complex array of pills for blood pressure, cholesterol, and heart function that had to be taken at specific times throughout the day. I'd help her to the bathroom when she was too weak to manage alone, prepare simple meals that she picked at without enthusiasm, and monitor her vital signs like the nurse had taught me. The silence between us was deafening, filled with 28 years of unspoken resentment and hurt. We were two strangers sharing a space, bound by biology but separated by a lifetime of emotional distance. I'd catch her watching me sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking, her expression unreadable, as if she was trying to solve a puzzle she couldn't quite figure out. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie on the air mattress in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling where I'd once taped glow-in-the-dark stars and constellations I'd learned about in school, desperate to dream about anywhere but here. The house would settle around us with familiar sounds, the refrigerator humming, the old furnace kicking on, the occasional car passing on Maple Street, and I'd wonder what we were both avoiding saying. But then, something unexpected happened. While cleaning out her bedroom to make it more accessible for her recovery, I found a box hidden in the back of her closet. It was an old shoebox, similar to the one I'd used to hide my escape money, but this one was filled with newspaper clippings, report cards, school photos, and awards I'd won throughout my life. Every article from the local paper mentioning my academic achievements was carefully cut out and preserved. My high school graduation photo sat on top, along with a program from my college commencement ceremony that I didn't even know she'd kept. There were photos of me at various ages, some I didn't even remember being taken. At the bottom of the box, I found something that made my breath catch in my throat, a letter, written in Mom's handwriting, dated just after my high school graduation. It was addressed to me but never sent. My dearest Sarah, I know I've never been the mother you deserved. I was 20 years old when I had you, barely more than a child myself. Your father left when he found out I was pregnant, and I was so scared, so angry at the world, and I took it out on you. Every harsh word I spoke came from my own fear and disappointment in myself, not in you. You were never a mistake, sweetheart. You were the only thing I ever did right. Watching you grow into this incredible, strong, independent woman has been the greatest privilege of my life, even if I was too proud and too damaged to tell you. I hope someday you can forgive a foolish old woman who loved you so much she didn't know how to show it without breaking both your hearts. I sat on her bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of a love I never knew existed, crying tears that felt like they'd been building up for decades. The rain outside seemed gentler somehow, tapping against the windows like applause instead of Morse code spelling out escape plans. When I walked back to the living room, Mom was awake, watching me with eyes that seemed clearer than they'd been in years. "You found the box," she said quietly. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? Why did you let me believe I ruined your life?" She struggled to sit up straighter, wincing from the pain, but determined to face me properly. "Because I was a coward, Sarah. I was so young when I had you, and I felt like such a failure. Every time I looked at you succeeding, being everything I never could be, it reminded me of my own shortcomings. It was easier to pretend you were the problem than to admit I didn't know how to be a mother. But all those years, Mom, all those times you made me feel unwanted. I know, baby. I know." Tears were streaming down both our faces now. "I thought if I pushed you away, if I made you independent, you'd be stronger than I ever was. But I see now that I just hurt you. I hurt us both." The next few weeks transformed our relationship in ways I never thought possible. We talked for hours every day, filling in gaps that had existed for nearly 3 decades. She told me about her childhood, about dreams she'd had to abandon, about the fear that consumed her early motherhood. I shared stories about my life, my career, my struggles with feeling worthy of love. We cooked together in that same kitchen where she'd once delivered her harshest criticisms, but now the air was filled with laughter and shared memories. The faded yellow walls seemed brighter somehow, as if the house itself was healing along with our relationship. Mom's recovery progressed well, and soon she was strong enough to take short walks around the neighborhood. We'd stroll past my old elementary school, the corner store where I'd worked as a teenager, places that had once felt like prisons, but now seemed like chapters in a story that was finally making sense. One evening, as we sat on the front porch watching the sunset paint the Oregon sky in shades of pink and gold, Mom reached over and took my hand. "Sarah, I need you to know something. Every harsh word I ever spoke to you was a lie I told myself to cope with my own failures. You were never, ever a mistake. You were my salvation, even when I was too blind to see it." I squeezed her hand, feeling the calluses from years of hard work, the hands that had provided for me even when her words couldn't provide comfort. "I love you too, Mom, and I forgive you. But more importantly, I hope you can forgive yourself." As her strength returned and my leave of absence came to an end, I knew I had to return to Portland and my job. But this time, leaving felt different. Instead of escape, it felt like the natural progression of a relationship that was finally healthy. The gift I decided to give my mother wasn't something that could be wrapped or placed under a tree. It was something more valuable than anything money could buy. A relationship rebuilt on truth, forgiveness, and unconditional love. I hired a local caregiver to check on Mom twice a week, not because she couldn't take care of herself, but because everyone deserves to know someone cares about their well-being. I started calling her every other day, real conversations that lasted for hours. We planned monthly visits where we could continue building the relationship we'd both thought was impossible, but the real gift was yet to come. 3 months after I returned to Portland, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a small wooden frame containing a photo I'd never seen before. Me as a baby, maybe 6 months old, sleeping peacefully in Mom's arms. She looked so young, barely more than a teenager herself, but her face radiated pure love and wonder. On the back, in her familiar handwriting, were the words, "My greatest achievement, my most precious gift, my daughter Sarah, never a mistake, always a miracle." I called her immediately, tears making it hard to speak. "Mom, the photo, it's beautiful. I wanted you to see how I really looked at you from the very beginning," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "before fear and pride got in the way, before I forgot how to show love instead of just feeling it. I see it, Mom. I finally see it." Now, months later, as I sit in my Portland apartment watching the rain that once spelled out escape plans, I understand that sometimes the most precious gifts can't be bought or earned. They can only be given through forgiveness, understanding, and the courage to rebuild what was broken. My mother spent years telling me I was a mistake, but the real mistake was letting those words define our relationship for so long. The gift I gave her was forgiveness and love. The gift she gave me was the truth about the depth of a mother's love, even when it's wrapped in layers of fear and regret. Some stories don't end with revenge or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes the most powerful ending is simply two people choosing love over hurt, forgiveness over resentment, and connection over pride. The woman who once told me I was a mistake now calls me every morning just to hear my voice. And every time she says, "I love you, Sarah," at the end of our conversations, I can hear the 28 years of unspoken love finally finding its voice. That's the gift we gave each other. Not just forgiveness, but the chance to rewrite our story. And this time, it's a story worth telling. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of forgiveness and second chances. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Sometimes the most beautiful gifts are the ones we never see coming, and love has a way of healing even the deepest wounds when we give it the chance.